A lot of you are going to click on this video and be like, what is this guy talking about? Is Demon Slayer worth watching in 2023? Now, you need to understand that even though Demon Slayer is one of the most popular anime out there right now, with one of the highest grossing anime movies, if not the highest grossing anime movie of all time, in Mugen Train, there's a lot of people that have never seen Demon Slayer or have only seen clips, and that's for a multitude of reasons we'll get into. But to those people, I think you want a real answer, like, is it worth it? And also a real, solid, neutral explanation as to why there are some people that dislike it and why the connotation towards Demon Slayer is what it is. Just as a blanket, there is a lot of hate it gets simply because it is popular, and people like to hate on what's popular. They immediately say, oh, it's only because the animation is good, that's why people watch it. Obviously, there's more to the story than that. And when you compare it to other popular shonen like One Piece, Chainsaw Man, JJK, you can see that every show kind of covers a different base for what people want, and that there's some people that like the small story of Demon Slayer compared to a complex narrative like JJK. Let's get into why some people do not like Demon Slayer. Number one is the beginning is pretty slow. Now, the reason it's slow is because they're really trying to establish Tanjiro, for one, as well as the fact that they want to build this world so you understand what's going on. And they do that for a good amount of episodes. And their first real mini arc, for those of you who are listening that have watched, the mansion arc of Demon Slayer is pretty bad. And that's around the 9 episode mark, around 9 or 10. And there's a lot of people that really dislike that arc and drop the show there. And honestly, I hated that part of the show too. It was pretty boring, it was pretty bland, and even though we got the introduction of some new characters, it really wasn't too interesting, and it made it seem extremely generic. That leads into my second point. Not only is the pacing really bad at the start, but you have this vast feeling of genericness from the entirety of the show as soon as you start watching it. And I hope you understand what I mean. Like, you have Tanjiro, who is basically the typical anime character in any form of matter, the typical anime protagonist. He's super good, does nothing wrong, cares for his family, the golden boy, right? And people are pretty tired of golden boy characters who really aren't that complex. It seems anyways not that complex, as well as the fact that he doesn't really have an intense motivation. Like, there's this stuff with his sister, and I feel like, especially when you're watching it, you don't feel that connection that much because you don't get much time with Nezuko when she's not a demon. So you really need to wait for the show to develop for you to really build that connection. And a lot of watchers at the beginning are just like, yeah, I don't know. Another reason it's kind of generic is it has probably the most basic power system in any power system ever. It's not really too intricate, but that's not really a real thing that gets people angry. It's just like the villains are also generic, and everything about it, when you think about it, you're like, wow, would I be watching this if the animation wasn't as good as it was? And yeah, a lot of people wouldn't, but personally, the genericness of the characters and the villains, especially in the beginning, is what culminates that feeling of watching something that you've watched 1,000 times before. Now, another reason some people dislike it and choose not to watch it, like I was saying earlier, is just the popularity and fandom can be a little overwhelming. The animation being such a leading part of the popularity, and besides the basic fact of something being popular causing people to hate it, it being popular, it causes everyone to praise the animation, which then causes people to think, oh, it's only good because of the animation. Another reason Demon Slayer, I wouldn't say gets a lot of slack, but you may not have watched it yet. The Demon Slayer manga, to my understanding and knowledge, this could be wrong, was not super popular before the anime came out. And honestly, after season 2 ended, I read up to the current, and honestly, the art is nothing to write home about. I feel like when you're reading it, you can almost tell when the anime came out to what chapter was out, because he started making the fights look a little bit more like the anime fights with the sword and kind of trying to like draw in the animation a little bit. But yeah, the manga being somewhat mediocre in art is definitely a factor in why there's some people that haven't seen it before and also look down on it. But at the same time too, though, the manga in the end was extremely good, and the story gets pretty complicated as well. Another big reason that I think the main factor regarding why a lot of people don't like Demon Slayer in the beginning is that the lack of fights causes that you don't really see those crazy animations you see in the trailers with the swords and the water and all of Tanjiro's attacks till a really long part into the season until you start seeing it consistently. I think that kind of causes people that when you take all the other factors into it, they get really bored when they're watching it. Now, I'm going to get into why you should watch it in 2023. Once you get past the initial 15 episode hump, which isn't like some treacherous thing, but it definitely is a little slow, you get to some incredible moments and the story gets a lot more complicated. Your first real villain that feels like he has some motivation in Rui, and I'm not going to speak on him because obviously this is about you guys watching it, but he's really complicated and there's a whole lineage there. And it's really more, it still is simple in nature and simple in narrative structure, but he himself is still more complex, and you start getting more feelings in the characters, you start connecting to them more because of character moments that happen through fighting, because Demon Slayer tells most of its stories through fighting, and that is common for most anime and most shonen, but it's like that for Demon Slayer on like 1,000. All impactful moments and characters happen during their fights, so you really need to wait for that big climax for you to really connect to the characters. And to talk about some of the other arcs that you go going forward past the end of season 1, you have Mugen Train, which is incredible. Some really good moments there. The first half villain of Mugen Train is kind of lame, but you get introduced to the really sick character in Rengoku. Because of the end of season 1, you're definitely going to be really interested in, and then obviously the end. If you know, you know. And then season 3, the second half of season 2, is probably something you've seen a clip of all the slashes and stuff going back and forth between the character with the fire in the background. Season 2, the second half of season 2, has some of the most incredible animation you'll ever see, as well as some of the most impactful story elements you'll ever see. And there's definitely stuff there that, yes, like I was saying before, it is still simple in narrative structure, but these characters get so many moments in these fights that I guarantee you they will feel like real characters to you that you actually care about. And if you're really wanting to watch something and you don't care about fights, then maybe you won't care that much about Demon Slayer, but I assure you there is definitely some good there. And the slow pacing that drags the story down, by the end of it and by season 2, you'll really not feel that anymore because of your connection to the characters and the fact that they develop more and have more funny moments. So to determine if Demon Slayer is for you, you really have to ask yourself, like, are you looking for a strong structure? Demon Slayer gets compared to JJK the most. Obviously, they came out at similar times. They both have stellar animation, although completely different animation styles. And because of that, you have JJK that is known for this complex narrative, insane power system, insane characters that are all insanely developed. And honestly, I prefer JJK to Demon Slayer, but Demon Slayer has a lot of good too that we just talked about. And if those things I talked about sound good to you, then yeah, you should go for it and watch it. But if you're like, if you finish this and you're still like, yeah, so it's basically the best of a generic anime, but it has really outstanding animation, I get that, and that's basically what it is. But you need to understand that the animation is part of the storytelling because of how much of a big part the fights are. So if that sounds good to you, then I think you should give it a watch, especially in 2023. You have a lot to catch up on too, so by the time you catch up, season 3 will probably be a little bit more than halfway done. But if you're preferring that One Piece style and you're looking for something like that in Demon Slayer, you're not going to get it. So don't go into it thinking it's going to be something that it's not, because you're right in your assumptions and the stereotypes are true to an extent, but you really have to slow down and really think about the characters if you want it to be that next level. So all in all, I think Demon Slayer is really, really good, but I can understand why someone that has watched a lot of anime in the past probably might want to lean away from it, but there still is, even for you guys, something there that you will enjoy. So that's all I have for you today. We're just getting started. We're going to stay consistent, and I'll see you guys in the next video.